Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brett Marston with the law firm of Gentry Locke. I'm sitting today in Roanoke, Virginia, and I want to welcome you to this lunch and learn about volunteering with the Virginia State Bar. It is my honor to be here with three of my friends and colleagues that I will introduce you to momentarily. But first, let me thank you for attending, and let me advise you that you are welcome to answer questions. Megan Connor with the Virginia State Bar will be monitoring the chat mechanism, and she will be providing us with some materials or links to materials as we go through the program today. We have about 45 minutes to an hour of a discussion about getting involved in the Virginia State Bar and other bar organizations across the Commonwealth. And we want to make sure that we emphasize to you that this is a fun, professional opportunity for you to engage in. It's something that can advance your career. It's something that can be something where you can make lifelong friends, and it's something where you can learn every time that you get involved. So we want to emphasize those things for you today. But first of all, let me make a couple of opening remarks, and then I'll introduce you to our wonderful panelists. I, over the last year, had the opportunity to travel to a lot of places on behalf of the Virginia State Bar as the president-elect of the organization. And one of the things I've learned is that Virginia is highly regarded as a bar, and it's very well run. And it leads to great opportunities, new relationships, and obviously part of this is that it leads to new business opportunities. One of the other things too that I've learned is that it doesn't happen by accident. It takes a lot of very well committed volunteers like you and the folks on this panel today, and many, many others, thousands of attorneys who volunteer in Virginia to help make the Virginia State Bar one of the most highly regarded and well-run bar organizations in the nation. And so what I want to do is to help us understand how each of us can contribute to that. When I was a new attorney, I'd hardly been here at Gentry Locke for a week or two. Someone who became a good friend of mine, one of my colleagues, came down the hall and asked if I wanted to be involved in the Virginia State Bar Young Lawyers Conference. And at the time, I really had no idea what that was, but I made the correct answer when I said, yes, I'd be glad to. Tell me where to sign up. And I got involved at that point in time in a disaster legal services program that the Young Lawyers Conference was putting on at that time to help with hurricane victims during that fall season. And by saying yes, I got involved. I continue to show up. I have been asked to get involved in other areas as well. One of the things you'll learn about the Virginia State Bar is there's organizations, there's conferences, there's sections, there's boards that touch on substantive areas of law and then provide a number of different angles for you to get involved. And we'll talk about some more of those today. Today's program is largely about the Virginia State Bar, but we also want to emphasize to you that there are a lot of other bar organizations. Our panelists will tell you about the fact that they are all involved in multiple bar organizations across the state. And so Virginia State Bar is the one we're talking about mostly today. But we do want to emphasize that there are a lot of great opportunities out there, whether there are other national, state, local, or specialty bars in which you can be involved. The Virginia State Bar is an agency of the Virginia Supreme Court. It has some unique rules and parameters that you'll learn as you get more involved in volunteering with the State Bar, including some of the reimbursement rules that are always fun to talk about. Whether you can have alcohol at events, those kind of things, which do lead to some challenges. But it's a unique element of the Virginia State Bar is the fact that we are an agency of the Supreme Court of Virginia, and in fact, a state organization. Part of what I also want to emphasize today and talk about is the fact that the reason we're doing this program today, and we're going to tape it so we can share it with other folks at other venues, is the fact that the Virginia State Bar has put a strategic plan in place in the last year. And one of the goals of the Virginia State Bar is to strengthen the cohesion among legal professionals and to continue to advance pathways for service in Virginia State Bar activities. So we're taking that seriously. We're reaching out to the members of the Virginia State Bar. We are encouraging folks to volunteer, to raise their hand. We're encouraging folks that if you know others who would be excellent volunteers, to ask them to get involved. And so this is just the beginning of an effort to get more folks involved and to enhance the opportunities within the organization. By the end of this program, Megan will have included on the links a list that will put you onto a site at the Virginia State Bar where you can see all of the State Bar sections, committees, boards, and other meetings that occur where you can get involved. For example, one of those is coming up at the Virginia State Bar annual meeting in June 11th through 14th. It's a great way to come and get to meet folks and find ways to get plugged in. With that, let me give you just a quick format today. We're going to be talking, we're going to have a roundtable discussion. We're going to have some Q&A among us here, have some conversations, tell you some stories about the involvement that our panelists have had over the years. And then there'll be an opportunity as well as we go along if you have questions. And certainly if you want to reach out to any of the four of us afterwards, I'm sure we would all be pleased to talk with you about opportunities and how you can get more involved. At this point, what I want to do is introduce our speakers and our panel members, and then also have them just give you a quick overview of their involvement and why they've been so involved in the Virginia State Bar over the years. I'm going to start with the introductions with the Honorable Doris Henderson Causey. Many of you know Judge Causey, who is a judge with the Court of Appeals of Virginia. She is a former Virginia State Bar president. She was the first African-American and first legal aid attorney to serve as a Virginia State Bar president. And I've had the honor of working with her for many years. She's a pleasure to work with, always in good humor, and has been a great volunteer, not only in the State Bar, but also in other organizations like the Old Dominion Bar Association and the Greater Richmond Bar Foundation. We also have with us today Chidinma Harley, who is a partner at Pervaiz and Harley in Fairfax, and she is a practitioner in family law, criminal defense, and personal injury work across Northern Virginia and the district. She's known for her compassion and her advocacy, and she serves in multiple roles within the Virginia State Bar, including on the Committee on Lawyer Discipline and serving on the faculty of the mandatory Harry L. Carrico professionalism course. Glad to have you with us, Chidinma. And our third panel member is Ben Schute. Ben is the current president of the Virginia State Bar Young Lawyers Conference. He is an attorney at Parcell, Webb & Baruch, specializing in criminal and traffic defense, plaintiff's personal injury, and civil litigation. He's a former assistant Commonwealth's attorney and has extensive experience in handling cases such as violent crimes, narcotics distribution, and white-collar criminal offenses. He's very active in his community and obviously in the Virginia State Bar. So I want to welcome all three of you. Thank you for being here today. Judge Causey, let me start with you and put you on the spot. Tell us just a little bit about an overview of your involvement in the Virginia State Bar and other bar organizations and what it's meant to you in your career.
Thank you so much, Brett, for having me here today. My overview of the bar and involvement, I first started being involved with the bar because of Judge Curtis Harrison, who now sits on the Chesterfield bench. He asked me to get involved with the bar, and I said, okay, I'll take you up on that. Well, I got involved with Bar Council. I loved it. I had so much fun there that I moved on to the executive board, and I wanted to become president. I had this infectiousness of meeting certain people there that made me want to become involved. I also got involved with the Old Dominion Bar Association. Stephanie Grana has given me, a past president, Stephanie Grana has given me a t-shirt that says Bar Junkie, simply because I love to get involved and I've enjoyed the committees that I've served on in the bar.
Excellent. We'll talk more about that as we go through, but I think it's obviously a big point to say someone asked you to get involved. And so for those of you who are here on the program with us today, or those of you who may be listening later, we are certainly asking and inviting you all to get involved, just as Judge Causey's friend asked her. Chidinma, let's ask you next. What's your overview of your bar involvement so far you've gotten out of it?
Hi, Brett. Thank you again for inviting me as well. I'm very similar to what you just stated, that I was asked to get involved and I said yes. I started really first in my local bar association. I'm in Fairfax, and I was kind of involved in some committees in Fairfax, and I was also involved with the Northern Virginia Black Attorneys Association. And as part of that association, I met a former president, Chidi James. And then when committees came open within the bar, he let me know about different committee opportunities. I started first with the disciplinary committee, and then from there I moved to Bar Council, then the Committee on Lawyer Discipline, and I'm slowly becoming a junkie like Judge Causey. And it really is just been something that I've increased involvement in just because I've really enjoyed it and I've seen a lot of benefits from it. So it's something that I continue to do.
Great. We'll look forward to hearing more about the details of that as we go forward through this program. Ben, I know you have an interesting story, kind of how you came to be involved in the Virginia State Bar. So tell us a little bit about your initial connection to the organization and why you stayed involved.
Yeah, well, and thank you, Brett, for having us here. So my experience is a little bit different from Judge Causey and Ms. Harley. Nobody asked me to get involved, but when I first came back, so I went to school out of state in Indiana for undergraduate and law school. And so when I came back to Virginia to be closer to family and start my practice here, I didn't know a single attorney in all of Virginia. And so I really wanted to get to know folks, build a network and a community of lawyers that, I can go to if I need help or have questions, or really just build that professional network of folks that I can, learn and grow from. And so I ended up being involved with the Young Lawyers Conference. I started as a district representative for the 6th District when I was down in Tidewater area in Newport News, and then ended up becoming a member of the Board of Governors, and then from there have become president of the Board of Governors for the Young Lawyers Conference. I'm also involved with other organizations within the state bar. So I also sit as president, I also sit on the executive committee and bar council. And in addition to that, I'm also on the Better Annual Meeting Committee, Better Annual Meeting Futures Committee, and have served in other capacities, as well as being involved with the Richmond Pro Bono Committee for the Richmond Bar Association as well.
Ben, I think you're going to get one of those T-shirts that Judge Causey has. I think we can call you officially a bar junkie as well. And it's kind of a term of endearment that's used. And I think for those of us who've been involved for many years, including myself, it's one of those things that you start realizing the benefits of the relationships and the friendships you make, and giving back to the organization, and the fact that we can help maintain our self-regulation is a very, very important aspect of our profession, and giving back to the public. Which leads me back to one point I want to make sure that we put in context for all of this is, I want to make sure everybody has a clear understanding of what the mission of the Virginia State Bar is. I think a lot of folks think, well, I have to join the state bar, but really, what does it do? And as I've gotten more involved, I realized that there is a very clear mission. I'm going to read this so that everybody has an understanding of where all of these activities fit in. And the mission of the Virginia State Bar is 1, to protect the public; 2, to regulate the legal profession of Virginia; 3, to advance access to legal services; and 4, to assist in improving the legal profession and the judicial system. And all of that is not accomplished by accident. There is a staff of 100 staff members that work at the offices in Richmond for the Virginia State Bar, headed up by our executive director, Cameron Roundtree. And Megan is one of the staff members there. We have a great staff at the Virginia State Bar that works hard every day to accomplish all of these parts of our mission. Where the volunteers fit in are on all of the conferences and sections and boards and committees that exist. And I printed them off this morning, and they're way too many to read. I was amazed even going back and looking at them. But I think if we talk about them in general categories, you'll find that there are so many places to plug in. There's something for everybody. What I have always said is, if you're gonna, and when I talk to the younger attorneys at our office now, is find something that you enjoy, so that you will show up and that you'll participate and that you will provide good information and ideas to that program. And so there's a place for everyone to fit in. Within the 20 substantive law and specialty sections, there are a lot of places where you can fit in just related to whatever practice you might have, whether it be like Ben, criminal law practice. For me, it was the construction law and public contract section that I was involved in for many years, ended up being the chair of that board or section. There's opportunities to get involved in health law, in general practice if you're a general practitioner, intellectual property, and the list goes on, and we're going to provide that to you. But the best way to get involved with those groups seems to be showing up at the seminars that they usually have, CLE seminars. Most of those groups have those, and just get to know people. And you'll find that you develop those relationships, and before you know it, you're being asked to serve on one of the boards. There are also 4 conferences of the Virginia State Bar, including the Diversity Conference, the Conference of Local and Specialty Bar Associations, the Senior Lawyers Conference, of which you are automatically a member if you're 55 or older. Guilty, I am, of that one. And then Young Lawyers Conference, which Ben is the chair of, if you're 36 and under or have been admitted for just 3 years or less to the Virginia State Bar. And so there's groups there that can provide opportunities to get involved. There's also several boards, one of which Chidinma mentioned that she'd been involved in, which is the disciplinary board. There's also the Client Protection Fund, which I think Judge Causey, you've been involved in that, and I think that was one of your initial involvements. And then also the Mandatory Continuing Legal Education, or MCLE board. And then last, there are a number of committees, standing committees and temporary committees that are formed up, and those include the Lawyer Referral Committee, been referred to the Better Annual Meeting Committee. There's also the Standing Committee on Legal Ethics, which is a very important part of what is done. So there's somewhere for everyone to plug in. So that's the other key part for, I think, for a takeaway here is, if you're interested in any of those things, just raise your hand, get involved, get started, keep showing up, keep providing important input, and before you know it, you too might be a bar junkie. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into a few of those things and talk about how our 3 panel members have gotten involved, what they've been involved in, and what they really have taken away from all of this as they've gone through it in their careers. And the first topic I want to get into is about the volunteer experience. And love to hear some stories if you all have those. But let me just ask, first of all, and I'll put you on the spot, Ben, what really motivated you to start volunteering with the State Bar? Why did you make that phone call to say, hey, I want to be involved?
It's a great question. The answer is going to sound a little lame, to be honest with you. I wanted to make friends. I came back and didn't really know a ton of people here. And so when I moved back, I'm from Northern Virginia originally, but moved down to Newport News right out of law school. And so I truly didn't know anybody for about 200 miles. And so I wanted to find some avenue, some kind of group or organization which I could, work with and work for and volunteer with that would give me the opportunity to meet people, just get to know folks. And I really lucked out because when I got in touch with the Young Lawyers Conference, I met a few people who were on the Board of Governors who were also prosecutors as I was at the time. So we had a lot in common, and they just were absolutely wonderful and taking me in and showing me the ropes and being supportive of me and everything that I wanted to do. And so, as a result, almost 10 years later, I now find myself in a wonderful position of having just incredible friends and mentors that I've met through the Young Lawyers Conference and through that volunteer service. And so to me, it did its job because I think very highly of the people that I've been able to work with, and the friends that I've been able to make have been lifelong friends. And so it's just been a really wonderful experience getting to know folks.
Because Causey, why did you say yes when your friend asked you to get involved? Really, I mean, you ultimately caught the bar bug, but why did you say yes when you first were approached about it?
Because I had, it was a bar association here called the Old Dominion Bar Richmond chapter, which is now the Hill Tucker Bar Association. And I wanted to get involved. I wanted to meet other lawyers. Like Ben, I was from out of state also. So wanted to make friends, wanted to meet other lawyers. And so he kept asking the young lawyers, say, you should get involved with the bar, because he was at the time, he was part of the bar examiners board. And he said, you should really get involved. And I said, okay. And so I was headed back to another meeting, and I knew that Judge Harrison was going to ask me, have you started getting involved with the bar? And I didn't want to disappoint him. So I said, yes. But I was also afraid. I was a little bit, because you're from out of state, you're from other places, you don't know everybody. When you go to these meetings, everybody knows each other. Well, I didn't. So I was a little bit afraid, but I did. I said, okay, I can do it. So I did it. I joined the Client Protection Fund Board. I met some of the best people ever. And I really liked the mission at the bar, that we were protecting the public, the very first mission, which if you join the Client Protection Fund Board, I can't say enough about the staff. The staff does pretty much the grunt of the work. You also do the work too as a volunteer, but the staff makes it very, very easy for you to do the work that you're doing. They put in the hard work to make sure that the rooms, everything is available, all the materials that you need, anything that you may need is there. And the other lawyers that you get to know, they help you also. And you meet people from all over the state. It's not just volunteering, say, in your area. We're in different areas. Like I was in Richmond. I met people from Southwest Virginia. I met people from all over, because the regions are also represented on those committees. And it just worked out wonderfully.
And I think it's important for us to emphasize some of the very vital work that the bar does do through these volunteer groups. Talk for just a second, as an example, about what the Client Protection Fund does and how that group works to protect the public, which is the #1 mission of the Virginia State Bar.
If someone feels that they have any client, any person any citizen that's been represented by a lawyer that feels that the lawyer has done them bad, or that they've been disbarred, or that something has happened, they can make that complaint or referral to the Client Protection Fund Board to say, hey, I want my money back because they took my money. We do have bad lawyers, unfortunately. And some of you may know that from the professionalism course where they do teach you that sometimes they have bad lawyers. Well, the lawyers are, the Client Protection Fund Board does just that. It protects the client. The client goes and say, hey, I gave this lawyer $10,000. The Client Protection Fund investigates. They gather all the materials. You fill out a form. The bar, you give the form to the bar. The attorney themselves investigate. They find out what happened, where's this moving along, and then eventually you can give the money back up to now. I think it's $75,000. I was before $50,000 when I was on the board. But Jane will kill me that I can't remember her last name right now, but Jane is over the Client Protection Fund. She's the Virginia State lawyer. She lets you know like what rules and regulations, everything has rules and regulations. So you know what's happening, what violation did actually happen, what occurred. And it kind of gets you more into the rules of professional responsibility, but more or less you're saying, hey, I'm going to be of assistance in protecting the public. And that was one of the first ones I got involved in, and I loved it.
You feel like that made you a better lawyer yourself to be learning about how some of the rules actually worked in more detail and some of the issues that come up with other people in practice?
Most definitely. It's kind of scary at first because this trust account thing was very, very scary, but it did make me a better lawyer in knowing what not to do. And just seeing how people are very vulnerable. Some people out there will believe in lawyers, that they're almost hold God status in the community. And I think that when you hold that status, you have a responsibility to the community. And people see us as all-knowing for some reason, but when they give the money and they give their everything over to this lawyer, they're really believing that this lawyer is going to fix their problems. I had one, I do tell a story about the time we had this case where the best friend had cancer and he took all of his friend that died money, insurance money that he was leaving for his children. And you were like, what? They were best friends. Like, no, he left the children and the wife without a single penny. And he set up $1 million policies. We were only able to give them back a portion of the money that was taken, but you hear bad stories and you can make those people happy again. One lawyer took a disabled child's money, and after he had broken his arm at the school, he represented him in a personal injury case, and the lawyer took this disabled child's money. The mother didn't know. We helped to do guardianships for mom so that she could get the money back from the Client Protection Fund because the personal injury had given him so much money. It's just those good feel good stories that you get out to do, that you see other people. And it wasn't just me, it was a team of people that worked to get this done. And it really felt good to do that. So I enjoyed it.
That's a good example of just your initial involvement. Of course, you got a story like that for every other piece of the bar you've been involved in. If we had 3 or 4 hours a day, I know you could tell a story for every bit of this you've been involved in. Let me ask Chidinma too, what impact have you seen so far in terms of how the volunteering with the bar has helped to impact your practice or your career or just your friendships or relationships with other lawyers or with the public?
I would say it's been definitely a tremendous impact in the sense that I am a managing founding partner of a small law firm. And I think in working in a small law firm, sometimes you might feel like you're in a little bubble. But when you get involved, particularly on the state level, you do start to meet other people all over the state. I recently, through being faculty on the professionalism course, just went to Charlottesville for the first time ever. I'm not a native Virginia person either, so it was my first time in Charlottesville. I was surprised how close it was to Fairfax. I never knew. But you learn different parts of the state, you meet different people. There's countless people. I mean, even Judge Causey, I met her just going to an event. I went to Law Day, and that's where we met first. And since then, it's always been a pleasure to see her again and again at different events. And you continue to meet people and you build those relationships that are really invaluable, even when you have a small business, considering you need referrals. And you also need to be able to confidently refer other people to outside of what your practice is. And it's actually been a very good part of my practice now that when people call me and they need an attorney in Richmond, I don't work in Richmond, and I actually personally know somebody that I can send them to, and not just, putting them on Google, but you have a wide resource of places that you can send them to and personally know that these people do good work. And I think that's important in considering how we need to improve the judicial system and what the mandate of the bar is in terms of making sure that we're protecting the public. That's one way that we can do it, when you personally know who you're sending them to and you know that they do good work.
So definitely a great way to develop relationships across the entire state and do that in a very natural and fun way. Ben, has there been any particular stories or personal accounts or moments that you would share with us?
Yeah, so I think one particular experience which happened quite recently comes to mind. I was volunteering for the Rule of Law Day down at the Supreme Court in Virginia, where they have tons of the young students from around the area will come in and learn about the rule of law. They'll hear from legislators. They'll hear from, and this year they heard from the governor. They heard from several folks in different branches of Virginia government to kind of explain to them what the law is and get them interested in it. And I had a fun moment where I walked in the lobby as all the volunteers are kind of getting ready for it. And I looked around and I thought, I know all of these people somehow in some capacity or another. We're not all, very close friends, but I have a nice working and professional relationship with all of them. And it struck me, especially after, as I'm kind of winding down my time as president of the Young Lawyers Conference and we'll roll off in June, it struck me how far I had changed that kind of experience from my first time coming into Virginia and not knowing anybody to now as I'm leaving the leadership of the Young Lawyers Conference. I think the main benefit for me more than anything else, though, and what that small experience speaks to is the number of folks that I have had the privilege of calling mentors throughout this process has been phenomenal. I really have been incredibly blessed, not just to have great, employers and bosses who I've stayed very close with over the years throughout Virginia, but also with the just incredibly kind friends that I've made and the mentors that I've had. I've been practicing for almost going on 9-10 years now, but I still have kind of so much to learn. And I have shifted between practices throughout my career in different ways. And each time I have, and every time I've had a challenge in that way, I've always had, a handful of folks that I know I can pick up the phone and call at a moment's notice and ask for advice and just ask for help and perspective. And those things that those more senior lawyers can only really give you from their years and years of experience with many different issues that, I just don't have experience with. So for me, having that mentorship and having those friendships, and it's been more beneficial than anything else because it gives me a great deal of comfort knowing that I have people who I can rely on when I have questions and need to go to them for help.
Great points, Ben. I was going to ask Judge Causey too. Are you allowed to have fun when you're doing any of these events? I mean, I know you don't like to have a laugh at all, so help our attendees and anyone who may be listening to this later on understand, is this all just serious, people who have run into bad lawyers, or you get to have some fun along the way too?
You get to have fun along the way too. It's I would say it's somewhat therapeutic. Like Chidinma said, she met me a law day. We're around eating hot dogs. As a bar president-elect and a bar president, you get to go to Missoula, Montana, and I just happened to jump into the water and float down the river, which is something some of us bar presidents got to do and president-elect. You meet so many people. You have such a good time doing the good work of the bar. We're a self-regulating profession, and you keep yourself pretty much sane doing these things. You meet other people, you share your experiences, but you're also doing work. You meet somebody, say, from Fairfax. You say, oh, what are you doing? And they say, well, I had this problem in court. But it's so much fun. I've attended so many conferences, not just in the state, but also on the national level, the ABA. I think that you learn so much from other people. Like Chidinma said, people refer not only within the state, but once you meet people on the national level, they refer you other cases. Ed Weiner will tell you that he was referred a really big case by somebody from another state. I've had the joy of meeting people that later on became famous celebrity TV judges. I met Dana Cutler was the president doing Ferguson and of the Missouri State Bar. And later on, she and her husband became TV judges, couples court with the Cutlers. They've come to the Virginia State Bar to speak. They've come to the VBA to speak. And their main thing of coming to speak was that they've met all of these bar presidents and executive directors. They were like, oh, we're coming to Virginia, but because Virginia, you guys are so much fun. And so you get involved and you decide that not only are you doing great work in regulating and keeping the profession honest and let people see good lawyers so they don't have all these bad lawyer jokes, you're also meeting great people, like Ben said, that will be future mentors. I always tell people when I used to work at Legal Aid, I know enough to be dangerous. So if people came to ask you, how do you do something? I may not know how to do the personal injury. I may not know how to do the construction. I said, oh, Brett knows that. So you refer them to them, and it's something that's your wheelhouse, and you feel good about making that referral because you know these people and you know that they're doing a good job because they're involved with you and you're involved with them and making sure that this bar association is doing the great work that we do. And no matter how big or small your contribution is, it's wonderful. I've served with people doing professionalism course. They asked me to come in and you do it for really it's half a day. It's not the entire day. By the time you finish lunch, it's a couple of hours later and you're done for the day. So you get to share with these new lawyers and you get to make sure that they start off on the right path. And sometimes the lawyers have funny questions and funny stories, but it is a lot of fun. And client protection and the Bar Council has dinner right before, the night before. There are no speakers, well, sometimes there are speakers, but the night before council meeting, and you're there with your colleagues having a great time, laughing, enjoying yourselves and meeting their families and knowing that lawyers that you see are not adversaries. They're your colleagues, they're your friends, and they have great stories and you learn a lot, not only about them, but their work.
Chidinma, have you seen any opportunities to enhance like your leadership skills or your organizational skills? Has the bar involvement helped you in any of those aspects?
Yeah, I would say definitely in terms of being on the faculty. I'm newly on the faculty for the professionalism committee. And I think from there, I've noticed now I've also had opportunities through that and other areas of service where I'm on the bar council and the committee on lawyer discipline. That's also put me in the arena to now start teaching in CLEs and doing panels in CLEs. And that's great because then you don't even have to pay. I don't think I will need to pay for a CLE. I don't know the last time I paid for one, except for I just wanted to know that topic. But you know, once you start teaching and you're into these other roles, it really helps you to fine tune another skill that is necessary. I'm a litigator, I'm in court. So fine tuning your ability to have these discussions and make these points and have those meetings and opportunities to speak and teach that you probably wouldn't have had. I would not have had those otherwise than from being involved in the bar and being involved at the state bar level.
Let's talk for a few moments. The experiences that the three of you had have been great. I love the stories. I appreciate that. We'll share some more as we go through. But let's talk for a moment about how folks that are listening to this today or later, how do they get involved? How do they make it happen? How does it occur? And let me just call on you, put each of you on the spot for a minute. I know how you all got involved, but how have you seen others get involved? How does it work best? And Ben, you're connected with the Young Lawyers Committee conference, so you're a natural entry point for new attorneys. How does it happen? Where does your typical or maybe even atypical volunteer, where do they arrive from?
A great question. So there are kind of, I think, two different avenues that you could go. The first I'll say is that, at least for the Young Lawyers Conferences, we have a volunteer submission form online that's available on the State Bar website, which you can go to and put in your name, your contact information, what you're interested in, and kind of what programs you'd like to help assist with. And that's a great way to do it because, especially for those folks who may not be comfortable picking up the phone and calling a complete stranger, and trust me, I get it. I'm not usually one of those folks either. That is a great avenue to do it. And the second one would be to just talk to other folks you know are involved. And I think that has been, at least as we've heard from both Ms. Harley and Judge Causey, that's a great avenue to get experience in what, groups may fit what you're looking for and things like that. And so what I will say is that, I have truly, to this day, I have not met a single person associated with the state bar, either as a volunteer or employee, staff, or otherwise, who has not been incredibly welcoming, incredibly generous with their time. People every now and then will give me a call randomly or shoot me an email randomly and ask me, hey, I'm looking to get involved. How do I do this? Or where would I go for that? Or is there someone in this place that can assist me getting involved in this thing? And I really enjoy it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's, great meeting new people who are all kind of coming together around a common cause. And so while I will say that, there's definitely kind of the more formal ways, especially for the Young Lawyers Conference, to kind of apply to volunteer, so to speak, I would really encourage everyone listening here, and then if we're being recorded, so later on, to really just be comfortable knowing that the person on the other end of the phone or on the other end of your email wants to hear from you, right? We really want to hear from you. We want to help folks with volunteering, and we really want to bring people into the very big tent that the VSB is. And we are a big tent, and there's room for everybody. And so that's something which I think is really important to know, is just, truly not a single person in my experience has ever been anything but welcoming and generous with their time. And we're all here to be a resource whenever we can.
Judge Causey, do you have any other tips on, you've probably seen a lot of folks come join in and assist in bar activities over the course of your career. What are some of the ways you've seen folks come in and have success? Someone who's listening to this, how do they get involved?
They get involved because, as President-elect President Marston, you sent out an email, and that email, well, you don't send it out. The Virginia State Bar staff, again, sends out this email, and within that email, I'm sure it has, I'm not sure if it's already come out, but you get these bar emails once a month or once a quarter, and they ask, please volunteer for a VSB committee, and you sign up. You look at the committees where you think you want to best serve, where you feel like you would be a good fit, and you put it down, and you go through and you say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to get involved. Sometimes there's a limit on who can be on a committee. So maybe that committee is full, but don't feel like that's a no. Just go on to the next committee, because there are a lot of people out there that want to volunteer. There's over 50,000 lawyers in Virginia. So, but for young lawyers, you are going to do the grunt of the work. You're going to love it. But the Virginia State Bar has room for everyone. Like Ben said, you can find your niche. I think that signing up, when you send out your email, Brett, that says, hey, I want you to volunteer, I think clicking on that link and signing up immediately is there. It's also the bar website, the Virginia State Bar website. You can go to the website. It's also committees. It's also for volunteer opportunities. You can click there. You can ask in your local area, your bar council representative. Everybody has a bar council representative. You can ask your bar council representative. And 9 times out of 10, your bar council representative knows of an opening, or knows because they represent the 37 circuits. Somebody in that circuit has said, I need somebody to serve on this, or bar council or bar staff member has come up to say, hey, do you know anybody that'll be good for this? Because I need to fill this position immediately. Somebody may be moving away. Somebody may have had a baby. And they say, well, look, I need a volunteer here to serve in this slot. And it could be one day things that you want to do. It could be multiple things that you want to do, but just make sure that you volunteer. I would say the best thing to do is start out and try one thing. And if not, you can always call Brett. Brett always knows where you can volunteer, and he always knows something that you can get involved with the bar, because more hands, more people on deck, the better it is for everyone. But that's how I've seen people get involved. People have asked me, and I have definitely sent them to the Young Lawyers Conference. If they're a part of the Young Lawyers, I send them to their particular area. I just asked somebody 2 weeks ago to join the Diversity Conference Board, because I thought that they come every year to the meetings. And I said, why don't you just get involved? They were like, oh, I don't know. I was like, yes, I want you to get involved. And then they said yes. And I introduced them to the person who was running the Diversity Conference, the chair. And so now they're all prepared, and they're going to fill out their paperwork to join, to be a member of the board.
That's great. Now, Chidinma, I know folks listening might say, how do we find time? How do you find time to do all of this? Is that a concern that a volunteer ought to have? And if you've been faced with that, how have you been able to balance out adding the bar and volunteer work to your career otherwise in your firm?
Yeah, I think definitely our practices, everybody's practice and what they're doing is time consuming. It's probably just part of the nature. But one of the good things about the bar service is that it takes time, but it's actually enjoyable time. And I would say also the bar staff, the Virginia State bar staff is really, 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 really excellent. So they give you the meetings ahead of time. Like I'm on bar council. I know the 4 meeting dates at the beginning of the year well in advance. So you just plug it into your calendar. You know, I'm not going to do any trials around this time because I know I have this other thing that I need to do. And really with all of the volunteer things, a lot of them also have been happening virtually. So there's a lot of meetings that you can go to that you don't really even have to leave your office. We meet for the Standing Committee on Professionalism. That's another committee that I'm on. We meet virtually, and we meet, I think, maybe once a quarter or something like that. And it's not necessarily fully extremely time consuming, but the work is really important. But because there's a lot of volunteers, it's things that can be accomplished in a reasonable amount of time without taking too much time away. And the other thing I wanted to share, Brett, just about how to get involved, I think another really good way is just to maybe attend the annual meeting. It's at Virginia Beach. It's a great time to, even if you don't know what to do, you're going to see somebody there that's doing something. There's somebody from every committee is going to be at the beach, and you're at the beach. So I think it's just a great soft launch into, hey, I kind of want to get involved, or I want to see what the bar is about. Attending the annual meeting is a really great time to do that, especially even small solo practitioners. It's tax deductible, perhaps, if you talk to your accountant. And it's a great way to just kind of spend some time at the beach, let your hair down in a very relaxed setting, and meet so many people across the board. So I think that, and judges understand, I'll say that too. Judges really understand about you have bar commitments and you need to be away to handle those responsibilities, or you're going to go to the state bar conference. And I've never seen a judge give anybody a hard time about that. So really, these are excellent things you can plug into your calendar and still help you accomplish your goals.
That's a great point, Chidinma. Let me ask Judge Causey about this, because it's one of the things that there is a bench bar committee that exists within the Virginia State Bar. The goal being obviously to enhance the relationships between the sitting bench and the practicing bar. But some of these events like Chidinma was talking about, where there's actually a program or a dinner or a conference, there's a natural interaction point between judges and the attorneys. Do you feel like that's something that is positive and helpful for the bar and for the profession? And is it another benefit that you can get out of volunteering? And I know that was a leading question, but you can answer it whichever way you'd like.
Yes, that's the answer. But it is, you see so many, most, like myself, I was bar president. So some of the judges have been bar leaders, and most of them have volunteered with the bar, no matter if it's the bar at your local level or the Virginia State Bar. But most have volunteered with the Virginia State Bar, especially at the Bench Bar Conference. You meet new judges, and some of the judges that you meet have been involved with your particular committee or your particular conference. But it's very rewarding, and I think that it enhances the relationship. Judges are somewhat, we have an isolated life, but we do like to meet young lawyers. We like to see young lawyers being involved. And anytime a young lawyer says that I'm going to help do this, judges are like, sure, go ahead. We understand. We know the bar work is very important, and we hold it to the highest esteem.
That's good. Ben, tell me a little bit too about just sort of not just networking and meeting judges. How have you found bar events and programs and involvement to have gone in terms of meeting other folks that are involved in the profession in Virginia or elsewhere?
I think to some degree, I'm going to echo a little bit of what my other panelists have said. I think the main benefit really in attending those events is that you surround yourself with a group of people who show up, and it's somewhat of a self-selecting group in a way, because obviously whoever's there has taken the time and made it a priority to show up and to contribute to the profession in one way or another, whether it's the annual meeting or whether it's something else. But what I have found, at least in my, we'll call it limited experience, has been that being able to be in the room with the people who show up, the people who do the work, the people who want to volunteer, who want to contribute to their community in one way or the other. I mean, I think it's probably, fair to say that we at the state bar, we're not necessarily saving lives, right? We're not, first responders here. We recognize that we have a very small corner of our garden to till, but it's a pretty great garden. It's a pretty great corner to till. And, if you're there at these events and at these meetings and just take the time to show up, what you end up finding is, you being in a room with other wonderful people who also are similarly oriented towards their community. And so that, I think, has been a wonderful benefit.
And let's talk a little bit more about the benefits as we get toward the end of this, and then create some time for any questions that might exist. So we've talked a lot about kind of what the potential roles are, how you all have gotten involved, how others can get involved. So let's talk about any other outcomes here, any other benefits that you all have seen. Is there any impact that you've seen on your career advancement or on your reputation, would you say, in terms of being involved? And Judge Causey, I'll start with you on this one. Obviously, you've progressed from being a practicing attorney to being on the Virginia Court of Appeals. Do you feel like your bar involvement, quite honestly, had any impact on that, or did it help you gain some exposure that led you to that opportunity?
Yes, I think it had a lot of impact, because the more I was out, the more I was visible, the more things that I volunteered to do with my community, and also being elected as bar president. There are a lot of things that we looked into as far as working with the bar and doing the 4 things that you listed earlier with the mission of the bar. So as bar president, the bar is an arm of the Supreme Court. So we fall directly under the Supreme Court. And with that, you have to talk to the justices, and they make a lot of the decisions. In fact, everything you pass on bar council goes to the Supreme Court to make sure it's passed. So Brett knows that you have to sometimes lobby for them to do things, or you have to figure out a way in your small group, say, okay, what are we going to make sure this do? And the justices saw that you worked very hard. And they also know that I worked at Legal Aid, and also was very big on the 2% and making sure that that access to legal representation was there. And some of those justices who saw me working very hard said that we think that you'll be a great judge. You'll be a great Court of Appeals judge. And I was like, what? Really? Me? But people tend to see something in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself. And so we, like you said, when you first got involved, you had a great time with the people that you met. You had a great time with Tracy Giles and others from the Young Lawyers, and now he serves on the ABA board of directors. So you meet these people who see in you way more than what you thought that you were doing. You were just volunteering, you were just helping out. But some of the justices said, I think you'll be great. You should apply. And I did apply, and I got the job. So yes, I've seen it change my trajectory of what I was going to do in life to other things. So I just want to make sure that your visibility in the legal community will assist you and improve your career. And it really has improved mine and gave me way more than I thought and dreamed.
How about you? You said you had just moved recently to Virginia, and is this giving you an opportunity to increase your visibility and to get to expand your network of opportunities and of folks that you know?
Yeah, I would say definitely, like Judge Causey mentioned, I knew her before she was a judge from my involvement with being involved with the bar. And really, I've met even justices on the Supreme Court from my involvement in being in the bar. And really, some of the steps that in my involvement I'm taking are some of the steps that these judges have taken. I think also I would say this, my firm doesn't do a lot of advertising, but I recently was on, if anybody watches reality TV, I was recently on the Real Housewives of Potomac. And I think that I would credit part of my bar involvement to that, because I think that was just probably how she found me, because she just said, yeah, I was doing a search and I wanted a family law attorney in your area, and somehow she found our firm. And I think that just having the visibility, if somebody's doing a Google search, you're coming up in more places because you have more involvement and you're doing a lot more things. I think it can only help to benefit any lawyer in their career. It's a daunting thing when you might be walking into a courtroom that you haven't been in before, but when you have somebody that you can call and say, this is the judge, do you know them? And you have, or if you happen to know the judge because you met them at the beach, or you happen to know your opposing counsel because you met them at a bar event, it really helps to reduce the stress level on the practice, and it makes it, at least cuts out a little bit of the unknown and makes your job that much easier and that much more enjoyable. So I think it's definitely something that, through your involvement with the bar and having that visibility and the opportunities to meet these people, even meeting the director, Cameron Roundtree, he's really great. He's a great person, somebody you can call and be involved with the decisions. You know, they always put out the things that bar council is going to be deliberating on, and the rules changes and things like that. They come out and we can read them, but it's nice when you're more involved, you can call and say, hey, you know, I'm looking at this rule change. What is this about? And get behind the scenes and understand what's motivating some of these changes, because those rules changes impact our practice. So it's very important when you're involved, you have the opportunity to actually speak to things that are going to impact your practice and thereby impacting the community as a whole.
That's great. Now, Ben, I'll give you the last word on here before I wrap it up and take any questions. And I don't know if you've gotten your own reality TV show yet out of this or not, but here's your chance for a pitch on that. Or alternatively,
not a chance.
You can address, you know, talk to the young lawyers out there about how they can, again, remind them how they can enter into this process.
Yeah, well, now I just got to remember to tell my wife that Miss Harley was on Real Housewives of Potomac. She's a big fan, so we got to go home and tell her I know a celebrity. So for me, I think the benefit that I've found, and particularly in my practice today, is that, you know, I represent folks all over Virginia, mostly Central Virginia, but I travel as well if, you know, that's what's needed. And so, you know, for example, I walked into a general district court in Stafford County recently, never been there before, never practiced there before, about an hour and 20 minutes north of where I am. And I walked in and introduced myself to the judge, and he said, well, you look familiar. You know, we met before. And I mentioned that I did some bar work. And he said, oh yeah, no, you're the president of the Young Lawyers Conference. I saw you, you know, y'all had a, you know, Virginia Lawyer magazine that was published, and read some articles in it and that kind of thing. And so it is a great platform for that kind of an introduction, because I'm quite sure that my role with the state bar didn't win me any favors in my actual argument in front of the judge. But when it comes time to representing to the judge facts in a proffer, or, you know, any number of different things that may affect your case, you know, if the judge knows that you're the kind of person that's going to volunteer and take a leadership position within the bar, then, you know, I think that to a degree, at least, there is some level of the judge, you know, recognizing that you're the kind of person they can trust with something that matters, right? Which I think is important. But the last thing I'll say, just kind of towards the kind of reaping the rewards of bar service, what I have found, especially just being at the beginning stages of this process, you know, in my career as well, has been that the fun stuff for me has been watching my friends and colleagues grow over time along with me, right? It is knowing that, like I said earlier, being in the room with people who show up, people who care and are willing to volunteer the time to do the work. You know, those are the people that are going to be doing really incredible, important things. Not that they aren't already, but they're going to be in, you know, Judge Causey's role sooner or later, right? They're going to be on, you know, a reality TV show sooner or later, right? They're going to be in these positions that lend themselves to success. And so I really just have found that it's been an incredible joy to watch these, you know, to make these friends, to meet these people, and then just kick back and watch their careers rise over time and see what wonderful successes they've had, both personally and professionally, and you know, meet their families and get to know their kids and just be in their lives in that rewarding way. And I think cultivating those relationships and recognizing that it's not a 6-month process or a year process. You're not looking to reap the rewards and get a referral in 18 months. You're looking to have somebody that you can go to for the next 40 years. And I think when you kind of expand your timeline a little bit, the benefits of these small investments here and there into the people that you work with really will, you know, grow over time.
Well said, everybody. Thank you so much for that. And Megan, let me know if there's going to be any questions, but let me wrap up this by saying, hey, thank you all very, very, very much for attending. Thanks to our panelists and those awesome stories and the encouragement that they provided. My closing remarks on that would be, raise your hand, volunteer. We need folks at all levels of experience. I do encourage you to get involved in local, state, national, other bar organizations, but especially consider getting involved with the Virginia State Bar. Nominate yourself, raise your own hand. Do like Ben did, pick up the phone and call me, call anybody on this panel. We'll talk to you as long as you want to about it and help you find a place to fit in. Or if you're someone who's been involved and wants to get more involved, we encourage that as well. Or if you're already involved and you have others that you want to encourage to get involved, talk to us, raise your hand, nominate folks or nominate yourself. There's always a place to fit in. And we really, really appreciate your attention to this and your interest. And with that, Megan, I'll turn it back over to you and see if there's any questions, and otherwise we'll get it wrapped up.
Thanks so much, Brett. We did have a couple of questions come through, but I actually think the panelists covered it in the discussion. So we were able to organically address those questions, which is wonderful. And I just want to take a second to say, you know, on behalf of the VSB staff, we really appreciate all that each of you do. And this has been really wonderful to listen to. So I appreciate y'all taking the time and, you know, all of the time that you take to volunteer with the State Bar.
Great, thanks everybody. We appreciate the attendance, and our panelists. Thank you all. Everybody have a great day and look forward to meeting you or seeing you in person.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.